Hey, hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout. Talking about the shoe fire up on the Shasta County National Forest. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is the Lookout live stream. My name is Zeke Lunder and I work out of Chico, California, and we take an interest in fire behavior and wildfire management, fire tactics. And I've been doing this work. I've been working in wildfire for about 30 years and spent most of my career working in mapping. So we use maps to kind of tell the stories of these fires and explain what's going on with them and try to make some sense of all there is to know about wildfire, how it works, and how we manage them and how we could use them. I'm a California prescribed fire boss, and so a lot of my work looks at how we could put fire back into landscapes that need it. So the shoe fire has been burning for about 6 days. It's a pretty interesting fire, and we're going to just kind of jump in and look at what it's doing today. Today it's fairly active, and in part because firefighters lit a bunch of things on fire as part of the control strategy, firing operations. So we're going to talk about firing operations, and we're going to talk about the shoe in particular. So where's the shoe fire? Shoe fire is north of Lake Shasta, or Shasta Lake, depending on how you like to slice it. Here's Redding down here. And Bernie is kind of up the top here, and here's Round Mountain and Montgomery Creek. So this fire is basically burning on Fender's Ferry Road in the middle of nowhere. And it's kind of made some runs. Early on, it made a decent run. In the first couple of days, it burned 1,000 acres or something. And then these white lines show the spread of it over the past 5 days. So this fire is doing what a lot of fires do, where it'll run to the top of the hill fairly quickly. And then once the fire's on top of the hill, it moves a lot slower, kind of across the hill and down the backside. So this area in here burned kind of the first couple days, and then since then the fire's been kind of backing downhill. So each one of these white lines is a day of fire spread. So this is 10th of October, 11th, 12th, 13th, and then you see down here the fire hasn't really moved for the past day, really, where it's back down into this creek corridor. North Fork of what's been called Squaw Creek for a long time, now referred to as Siouxland Harris Creek. So these progression lines just kind of tell a story of a fire kind of making its way fairly slowly across the landscape, burning downhill. And oftentimes if we light a prescribed burn, we light it on the top of the hill, and it burns down slowly, and that's a way to kind of manage the intensity. So the fire behavior is kind of dictated the urgency, and this fire, they didn't really staff this whole kind of western flank of it until a couple days ago, in part because there was nothing they were going to really do. They weren't going to put crews out here on this steep mid-slope trying to cut fire line where rolling material and everything could roll down below them. It's tough to do what we call underslung line on steep ground. So their strategy's been letting it back down to this creek. And so you can see that it's slowed up here as it's gotten down into the creek. No guarantee that it's going to hold at the creek, but they're working now on kind of direct attack in that kind of riparian corridor. A couple days ago, they did a firing operation down in here, maybe the day before yesterday, where this is what we call Division Alpha on the south end of the fire, and they put in fire line along through here, and they lit off of it. And so this is now kind of cooling down, and this is one of the places on the fire. When you hear that they're saying the fire is 7% contained or something like that, this is the section they're saying is contained. So what's happening right now is this red line here shows where the fire was early this afternoon, and the kind of reddish line back here shows where the fire was last night. And so basically what we're seeing is that firefighters have lit off this ridge system, and they've also lit fire out in here where they've got control lines to try to get the fire to kind of back down off their control line. So what they're trying to do right now is to secure the southern flank of this fire before north winds arrive later this week, like Friday and Saturday. And we've got a map here that's their operations map. And basically it shows up here that there was hand line. This little black and white dots, or black dots, this means that this is a kind of what called completed burnout. So showing that they lit off of the hand line and dozer line and some road that was prepped, kind of from up here at the creek, Sulanharas Creek, along this flank. So this is held now, and that's why this line is now black on the line, on the map, is showing that this black line means it's contained. So over here across the way, this is still kind of underslung, and this hasn't really moved very much in the last couple of days. And then you can see that there's completed hand line here in Division Zulu, and they're going to be firing down that. So there's like kind of a trail or a road here, and it zigzags, and they've got hand line that kind of cuts that off. So that's what they're working on right now. Is they, in the last like 18 hours or so, they've fired, like this pink and red is where it was fired last night when they made this map, or early this morning. And then up in here also, this is firing off of a dozer line. So the geography of this part of the fire is that you've got Fender's Ferry Road that comes up, and it kind of climbs out of Podum Creek, and it goes through this Goose Gap, and then it drops down. Fender's Ferry drops down this north slope and goes down into the main kind of road that goes through Sulanharas Creek. So they also fired off this road last night. So if we turn, it's a little hard the way that Google this displays. So you can see that since, let's change this up a little. Just outline that with green so we can see it better. Yeah, so this green is growth since last night. So right now there's a bunch of tankers flying on the fire, and it looks like they're hitting this ridge really hard. It looks like they might have had some slop over on this ridge, because they ordered up like 5 large air tankers and a VLAT, a very large air tanker. And it looks like they're kind of hitting that ridge right there. So it looks like what might have happened, they may be having some issues holding this ridge. Someone's asking where the nearest population is, and there's a couple little scattered cabins out here, but for the most part there's no real population here within about 10 miles. Yeah, it's 12 miles to Round Mountain, which is kind of the nearest civilization, and that's across a big river canyon, and it's not going to get there. So back to our ops map. There's this box that's been built here. So they're firing this kind of southernmost portion right now, but there's this box of dozer line, prepped road. This is kind of proposed dozer line, but they're also, I think, working on hand line to connect down this ridge to Goose Gap. So basically they're going to fire this whole box. And that's going to be, that's my guess. Even though the fire isn't moving a lot in here, it's just they're not fighting it directly in this deep canyon, just because it's not really super safe to get people in there and then get them back out again. And then north of Goose Gap, they've got dozer line prepped and hand line, and they started firing that last night. So if you look at the progression, this is yesterday's infrared, and then last night's infrared shows all this new heat. So when you see new heat that's like pressed right up against where there's a control line on the map, that's almost always telling you that there's firing operations, and that the heat you're seeing is because they lit it there. So they finished their hand line along this edge of the fire. And usually as hand line's getting built, it's getting fired at the same time, because you don't want unburned fuel between you and the fire. So they'll continue firing this hand line and dozer line. So the final size of this fire, unless the rain that's coming just knocks it out, and it isn't, the rain might knock it down for a day or two, but almost certainly the final size of this fire, if it stays within their lines, will be out to this dozer line, this road, this dozer line, this hand line. And this has already been fired now out to this line. They've got some issues over as we move a little farther up here. This is Bear Trap Creek, and it was holding kind of against that creek for a couple of days, and then it has crossed. It's kind of hard to tell here. It crossed Bear Trap fairly early on. So right now the fire's backing down towards Sewell and Harvest Creek here. So they've got proposed line along this main road. They've got proposed kind of dozer line going up this Garden Ridge Road. So they've got two options here. They've got a proposed line up this ridge, and they've got a proposed line up this ridge. They're not showing any line completed yet. Sorry, I see that. That's proposed line there, proposed line here. And then they've got completed dozer line up here. As you start to get farther north here, you get into commercial timberlands, and they really want to keep the, sorry, I just turned on every layer in the world, looks like. Yeah, they really want to keep the fire out of these commercial timberlands. So that's kind of where your fire is right now. I heard a rumor that CAL FIRE was putting a bunch of resources out on this side of the fire. I haven't confirmed that yet. CAL FIRE is generally in charge of protecting the state responsibility lands, or paying for that. And all these yellow squares are private lands. And so sometimes CAL FIRE gets antsy when there's a federal fire and they feel like the feds aren't being aggressive enough to keep the fire off the state responsibility area. But that's just some unverified information from an anonymous source that I don't even know. They just messaged me on a forum. Anyway, firing ops, that's how we control big fires. And somehow I turned off all my layers here, so there you go. The infrared last night was showing these random dots out here, and that doesn't always mean that that could be a hot rock or an idling ATV or whatever. It doesn't mean there's heat there, but all right. Thanks, Chief, for the nice comment. Okay, shoe fire. So we've talked about how this fire has potential to kind of spread up into this cut over timberland. However, right now the threat is the north winds, and that's why they're focused on here. So I thought I'd jump over to my flight radar and see what's going on. I've had a bunch of big tankers on this thing the last few hours. This flight radar 24 site's pretty cool, because you can track where planes have been. So this this air tanker, which is a big one, it came in here, and you can see it orbited, and then it made a drop, and it looks to me like the drop, you can tell from where they flew back out. So it looks like all the tankers seem to be dropping on this ridge here right now, and that is this ridge here where we're talking about the firing ops. So they've been kind of, the DC-10 and a bunch of heavies are painting this continuously. It's pretty squirrely. Check out the lead plane and the spotter plane, and those guys they're just drawing circles in the sky all day. I don't know how they do it. But if you don't know exactly where a fire is, when you look, if you pull up this flight radar, you can almost always see where the action is, just where the spotter's circling for hours. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other resources for figuring out what's going on with fire like this. We've got InstaWeb, and InstaWeb used to not be that great, but it's gotten a lot better. You go to instaweb.wildfire.gov or just Google InstaWeb, and the information pages now, they pull a lot of information from the intel reports that the fire is filing with the Geographic Area Coordination Center. And they've gotten a lot more granular. In the past, they assumed that the public didn't really have attention for detail or interest in tactical level of information, and now they've been better about sharing a lot more. So here they say, Division Zulu, construct indirect line from Fenders Ferry Road to the east towards the 34N17 road. So this is Division Zulu, and they're saying for this whole division, pretty much from Goose Gap, construct line down here to the to this road, right? So that's what we see them doing. And they're saying if direct line is not feasible, construct indirect line and tie in to Division T. So there's Division Tango up here. Division Tango, indirect line southeast towards Goose Gap. So they're saying, connect this box basically. So yeah, InstaWeb, especially if you can get a copy of the map, it can be pretty useful. They're not great about posting maps that have the divisions, but they're also getting better at that. So helps give you an idea of where their priorities are and generally what their tactics are. Now, I've been saying a lot that this is a good fire. And what do I mean by that? Good fire. Like fire's fire. Is there good fire? Is there bad fire? It all depends on what you'd like to get out of it. And obviously, like my kid had a track meet last Friday in Reading, and they almost canceled it because of the smoke. And kids have indoor recess in Shasta County for a couple of days. Obviously, there's nothing perfect. No one wants to eat smoke. But when we talk about like wild landscapes and our wild lands and our wildlife and everything, like fire is like one of the only tools we have to accomplish land management. The Forest Service doesn't have the ability. People say, "Oh, I got to manage the underbrush." I see in the presidential campaign, Trump saying California needs to manage their underbrush, and we're not going to give them disaster money unless they do it. Well, realistically, fires, like you're not going to go out on all this steep ground with like a weed eater and treat 1 million acres, and you're not going to log scrub oak and other oak forest and other stuff that has no commercial value. And a lot of the timberland out here doesn't even have that much commercial value. So when it comes down to it, fire is like the only tool that we have to like economically or just realistically at all manage millions of acres of wildlands. So when I've been saying this is a good fire, I'm talking mainly about the severity and the kind of the way that it's burned. So I just want to pull up some imagery here that kind of shows that visually. If I can find it, here it is. All right, so this is the fire in red. And this is some satellite imagery that was captured 2 days ago. And I'll just kind of turn it down a little here so you can kind of see. So the red areas here are areas that have burned hot, and the green areas are areas that still have kind of intact forest, like living forest canopy. So you can see the heat out here along the edge of it. The fire's kind of just slowly been spreading, even uphill, which tells you something about we got some rain. Tells you how receptive the fuels are to fire. So you see that like the fire's initial run, there were some patches where it ran up a slope with some wind on it. And these patches that burned hot, you can see like most of them are already brush. And brush burns hot. Like it's not a bad thing for a brush field to burn hot because that's how brush just does its thing. But you can see just about anywhere we had larger trees in that area, like the fires like hasn't consumed the whole canopy. Over here on this side of the fire, these clear cuts were actually burning like as the imagery was captured. So you can see that these clear cuts burned hot, and that's not super surprising because some of these areas, after logging, they've got a lot of dead and down slash and other kind of fuel for a fire, and they're exposed. They're super dry, right? They're fully exposed to the landscape or to the sun and to the winds and everything. So they tend to be drier. So you can see that this was burning as satellite went over. This clear cut area burned hot, and at adjacent areas, like we're barely on fire at the same time of day. Anyway, so when I say good fire, it's like, hey, so far it hasn't burned anyone's house down. It's under burning. It's doing what we would do with a prescribed burn. It's costing a lot of money because you've got hundreds of people out there with dozers and other heavy equipment to keep it small. When I said earlier it's a good fire and that I'd be happy if it burned 10,000 acres or 30,000 acres, that's because this is what we're getting out of it. If we burn this whole landscape and the severity pattern continues to look like that, yeah, the smoke's going to be a bummer, but that's going to be a good thing overall for this whole landscape. The areas that burn hot are going to sprout back, and lots of food for deer, and the timber's surviving. The trees that are there are going to be more fire resilient, less likely to die in a big future wildfire. So it kind of, like I said before, it kind of kills me that we're like putting a ton of energy into stopping this fire this time of year, because we're supposed to have a wind event this weekend, and it's going to blow for like 2 days. And yeah, this fire might move a bit in those 2 days, and that's going to be followed by cooler weather, and whatever fire got, say the fire, worst case scenario ran. We had some, patch of high severity here, and then the fire just is going to lay down. And it's going to keep backing. And so, yeah, you get a proportion of a landscape when it burns that burns with high severity. That almost always happens. You get some high severity. But on the balance, you're going to be looking at this fire, like 70% of it's going to be beneficial severity, and the high severity is likely areas that are all right with the high severity fire. All right. I'm going to jump over and talk about the smoke a little bit. All right, so it's a little more obvious yesterday. You could see the smoke had kind of settled down into the valley here. You can see some smoke down in the valley here, like in here. And then you see it generally clearing out to the north. The thing about this is there's hardly anyone living out here to the northeast. You've got Bernie, that's kind of over in here. You've got Fall River, but a lot of the smoke is just going out into this areas that, like, eastern Oregon, other places no one really lives. I think one thing this brings up for me thinking about smoke impacts from this fire is that, the state's talking about like a huge expansion in acres of prescribed fire, but we've got a 3,000 acre wildfire burning right now. Granted, the atmospheric conditions are not great for smoke dispersal, but we got smoke complaints about a 3,000 acre fire. Like if we were trying to burn 100,000 acres in the fall, like it becomes fairly untenable. Someone says there's populations out there too, WTF. Yep, there are, but it's not like freaking megalopolis, right? I understand. There's people that live out in Burns and Wagon Tire and Ravendale and Termo and all of that. I'm not saying that you should have to eat smoke any more than anyone else. I'm just saying that. Yep. All right. All right, people. Here's our outlook for the weather. Minimum RHs are down Friday and Saturday down to kind of these critical levels. As I was saying, though, like this minimum, when you got RHs in the 30s and high 20s, and temperatures below 80, that's like prescribed fire weather. And so we're in pretty solid prescribed fire weather. We get out of our prescribed fire good window here for maybe just a little bit with these winds, right? So you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you got gusts to almost 30 miles an hour, mainly on ridge tops. Coming out of the north, so that's no good. That's a kind of a good long blow. Fire could move a ways under that. However, you've got, during that same time, you got these pretty mild burning conditions, right? Yeah, it gets really dry, but it's only 66 degrees. This ventilation rate stuff here is good because it tells you something about the stability of the atmosphere. Can't really get super deep into it right now. All right. Anyway, that's some arcane stuff. Looking at the webcam here around Mount Shasta. See, the fires, there's not a lot of, like, we don't see, like, column development or anything major happening on this fire. The smoke packed in it's all packed in fairly low here, so it's shading parts of the fire. But, you just don't see, like, a big, mushroom cloud or anything going on here. Okay, I was going to talk about something else here, and I'm spacing out on what it was. Shoot fire. Bear with me. Train of thought. Left the station. I want to talk a little bit about the outlook for what's coming in here next few days. This is the 7-day significant fire potential. So Tuesday, kind of low risk of big fires. Wednesday, low risk or no risk. Thursday starts to get a little windy, so there's potential for wind-driven grass fires, but still like no risk in the foothills on Thursday. Friday's a little drier. There's still low risk of big fires in the foothills. And same even Saturday and Sunday. So like the forecasters aren't calling for like Armageddon in the foothills. They're saying it's going to be windy in the Sacramento Valley, windy in the North Coast or the North Bay. But the rest of the state, we don't see like even a moderate risk of large fires in the mountains. I think that brings up an important point, is that oftentimes prescribed burning gets shut down all over Northern California because you've got red flag warnings in the Bay Area and people are worried about if you had a burn and you had an escape, whether or not you would get the resources you needed to deal with it. But what they're telling you right here is that there's low risk of an escape. There's low risk of a wildfire getting large anywhere except the valley. This website here, the 7-day forecast, I'll put it in the chat. It's a good tool for getting kind of a big picture view. The weather forecasters, they draw their red flag warnings based on, and you get these scary looking pink maps. And then scary, all caps stuff. Where I lost my page. But oftentimes the weather forecasters, they're not fire forecasters. And so you'll get a red flag warning. It says critical fire weather conditions are likely or imminent. And so, yeah, it's going to be dry, it's going to be windy, and there is potential in these areas that are dominated by grass for damaging wildfires. And it's good for people to be careful about that and pay attention and, don't leave your barbecue unattended and all those things. But I think often on the news, you hear these warnings and you tend to think like, oh my God, like it's Armageddon, and that's why these maps are nice, is because they kind of spell it out geographically. Like, so we're doing a prescribed fire training exchange right now, these 2 weekends, last weekend and this coming weekend in Butte County, and we're hoping to burn grass in between Chico and Orville on Saturday. but right now the wind forecasts are high. And so likely we won't get to burn it. But doesn't mean that they should shut down all the burning everywhere. And so what we're trying to, in the prescribed fire world, we're trying to lean in and in Northern California just because we've got red flag warnings in the Bay Area. I wanted to share a little bit of footage from the burns we've been doing. Just to kind of give you guys an idea of, we talk a lot about what we're doing with these training exchanges and stuff. Basically, we've got about 60 people out who are mostly, a lot of them have no real wildland fire experience, and so we're training them on tactics. We've got trainers. This guy, Jose, is from Spain. He's like one of the kind of best prescribed fire trainers in the world. So we're lucky to have a lot of talent right now descending on Butte County to teach people, citizens, how to use pumps, how to do a hose lay. These are some of these folks are from Feather River College. So the company I work for, we provide training, trainers, and here we're providing equipment. Just get these folks familiar with the basics of how you do it. This is going on in Cohasset. We're actually inside a salvage logging unit in an area we burned before. So some of these areas we burned didn't survive the park fire. So we're walking people around and talking about whether our burns, where they did and didn't make differences. That's pretty wild. Commuting through Cohasset, which we've been working up there for years, burning and trying to do other kind of fire safe stuff, and then it's just, there's some real carnage up there. So I was driving up there the other day, Saturday morning. There's a big rainbow when I left my house, and then you drive through just freaking Mordor to get to the outdoor classroom where we're working. But basically what these prescribed fire training exchanges do is they give people kind of a sandbox in which to play with fire safely. Here Jose is using flagging to kind of lay out where our spot fire is. All right. That's all for now. Thanks for joining in on the Lookout. You can check out our website. Lookout.org. We haven't been super active on there recently, but it's a good place to check out our sponsor, QTech. QTech's got really nice engines that we use on our pickup trucks. What we're finding is that with QTech engines, all the local nonprofits who are getting into fire have been getting some grant money to build apparatus, and so pretty much all the engines we had on this event were QTech engines, and so it's been nice for they're all kind of laid out the same, so getting people kind of lined out on pump operations, everything. Really been appreciating having a QTech truck. So QTech's a sponsor of the Lookout. Appreciate their help, and it's nice that they're part of this good stuff we're doing with building a prescribed fire workforce around here. Anyway, thank y'all. Please consider becoming a subscriber on PayPal on our